Hey everyone, my name is Rob Phelan, also known as the FI Educator Online, and today we are talking about investing and really trying to figure out what is going to make you take that first step and actually start investing, because so many of us hear it. We know we're supposed to invest. We know kind of how to invest, particularly if you're in a personal finance class, like you're learning the nuts and bolts of what investing is and how to do it. But so many of us don't take action and take that first step. And we're going to try and crack that today and make it so that you're like, yes, I'm going to do this. I'm going to leave this call and I'm going to set up my first investing account. I'm joined today by Chloe Daniels, who is the owner of Clo Bare Money Coaching. She's a certified financial education instructor, and she has been helping people do well with their money for years and years. And is one of the best people to follow online if you want to learn about personal finance in a really real and fun way. Chloe, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to be here. This is the type of education I wish I had had when I was in high school. I'm not sure if I would have really listened to it, but I'm hopeful that with this education, a few students will take the advice and start investing.
Yeah, it's one of the things we always hear from adults, like, oh, I wish I had this in high school. And I'm kind of like, you probably wouldn't have paid attention anyway.
Right. It's
But
hard to make it real for you when you're young, you know? It's like, well, retirement, that's not something I need to worry about. Like that's a future problem, right?
and that's our job today. Our job today is to talk to high school students who are really thinking about either personal finance or not, and try and make it like, let's say this is real, this is relevant, this is something I should do right now. This is not for something 10 years in the future. So speaking of like high school, like what did that look like when you finished high school? Were you into money yet? Were you doing anything related to finance at that time?
No, so it took me until my late 20s before I finally decided, okay, dumber people than me have figured this out before. It's time for me to figure out this whole money thing, because I had spent decades being bad with money and telling myself that story. But fresh out of college, it was 2012, and we were still very much recovering from the great financial crisis of 2000, or the great recession of 2008, 2009. And so even though I had 2 degrees, I was struggling to get a job that paid much more than minimum wage. And I had about $80,000 of student debt. And so I felt pretty trapped. I felt pretty hopeless for a really long time. And like I said, it wasn't until my late 20s where I was like, okay, other people have figured this whole money thing out. I'd really like to stop struggling someday. And that's when I decided, you know what, let me just try. Let me just see if I can figure this whole money thing out. And turns out I became obsessed with it. And it turned into not only a new career path for me, but also was able to build some wealth in a short-ish period of time.
Yeah, because you did, I think, what most people do, most 20-year-olds in particular. Like, we start this journey, we go to college, we build up a lot of debt in a lot of cases. We maybe buy a car on credit as well. We might buy a house. Like, you can have a lot of debt by the end of your 20s if you're not careful. And I know from your blog that you were 80,000 in debt when you started off. So like, what got you there? And then what made you turn the page and be like, okay, like, no, actually I'm going to try. And how'd you do it?
Yeah, so the $80,000 originally when I graduated college was from student loan debt. But then when I finally addressed my finances, it wasn't until late 2018. And I still had about $70,000 of debt. And that was between both a car loan and my student loans, what was remaining on my student loans. So what got me there was just when I was in high school thinking about college, I'm one of 5 children. My parents have 5 kids. So even though it was always expected that we would go to college, it was also always expected that we were going to take out loans in order to pay for college. There was no way my parents were going to be able to pay for all of us. And it was just never even a thought that that was something that was going to happen. And I didn't really think much about scholarships or anything along those lines either, because I was never the smartest. I was never the best. I was just somewhere in between. And so it was just like, that's what you do. You take on student loans and you hope that it works out. By the time in 2018, when I had this like, okay, let me figure this whole money thing out, I had fallen into the same trap that you just talked about of, at my very first big girl job, I got a brand new car that was worth half my salary at the time. The car was a $20,000 Prius C, which is cheap for today. Like, to get a new car for $20,000 is pretty difficult. But I was making $42,000 a year at the time. And like, I remember sitting in the dealership and the guy asking me, well, what can you afford? And I said to myself, well, I'm trying to decide what I want to afford, because I told myself that whatever the payment was, I would just Uber drive to make up for it. So it was like, even if this payment was going to put me in debt every single month, I was like, that's fine. I'll just Uber drive. And so I ended up taking on a payment that was more than what I needed it to be. And I Uber drove for like 2 months to pay for it. But obviously that wasn't sustainable because I wasn't making a ton of money from Ubering. So I had just made a lot of mistakes. And by time 2018 rolled around, it was just like, all right, let me figure this out. Let me try something different.
Okay. So let's get into the main topic, which is investing. So when you start turning around, did you start investing immediately or did that come later?
That came later. So I was very afraid of investing. I thought, again, spent most of my life thinking I was just bad with money. And when I thought about an investor, I thought those are dudes on Wall Street who have been studying finance their whole lives. They know so much more than I do. I could never possibly understand that stuff. And so even when I started getting my money right, that was still in the back of my mind. I just thought, I'm going to save a bunch of cash. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to, save a bunch of cash and then take a couple of years off, travel the world, and then I'll figure out the rest of the stuff. So I was focusing on saving cash, and then I was also focusing on paying off my debt. But I was continuing my education. I was still learning about money. I was obsessed with it. It was something that I was really interested. I found the financial independence retire early community. And as I started educating myself more and more, the more I could not ignore that I needed to be investing, that it wasn't just about being debt free. It wasn't just about, saving money in cash. If I really wanted to build true lasting wealth, I had to start investing, especially because I was still in my 20s at the time. I think I was like 28 years old. So when 2020 came around, I finally was like, all right, this is the year I'm going to start investing. This is the year I'm going to figure it out. And that's when I started investing and really speeding up my education on how to invest. I made some mistakes when I first started, but those mistakes were easy to turn around. And since then, I've been investing like a maniac.
Yeah. And that's a big turning point for most people. I know you guys in high school watching this, like you already have gotten this, that like investing is very accessible to everyone. And that's a more relevant or more recent development. I mean, I feel like when I was a kid and I asked my dad about investing, he's like, I'm not really sure. Like, I think you've got to go through like a broker and they have to like do the buying and selling for you. And since that time, which I'm 35, so that was probably 25 years ago. Like since then, I mean, the internet has allowed everybody to go buy and sell on their own without needing a third person to do it for you. And it's even developed further where like you don't have to buy whole shares of things. Now you can actually just say like, I want to invest $10 and I can take my $10. I can buy any individual stock I want or a fund. It's very much accessible to every person at every income level as well, which is so cool. And something that is very unique to you guys growing up, that you have this available from the very beginning. So let's talk about how we get started. So we're still unsure. We want to take that first step, and let's make that first action step really easy. What's our first action step when it comes to getting started with investing?
So the first thing you've got to do is you've got to open a brokerage account, which brokerage is just a fancy word for a place where you can go and buy investments. One of my all-time favorite brokerage accounts, especially for teenagers, is Fidelity. Fidelity has what's called a youth investing account, which is a very unique investing account. No other brokerage, as far as I'm aware, has a youth investing account. It was new when it came out. It's not an UTMA, UGMA. It's not a 529. It's none of those things. It is a taxable brokerage account that a teenager can open with a parent. So even though you're opening it with a parent's oversight, it's still your investing account, and you can get started with investing for as little as $1. You can obviously talk to your parents about potentially doing another type of investing account, like a custodial account with an UTMA, UGMA, if that's something that interests you. But in terms of the easiest thing for you to do that requires the least amount of work is you can go online and open an account with Fidelity Youth Investing account in like 10 minutes. And then from there, you're going to connect your bank account and start picking some investments. Do you want me to dive into what types of investments?
In a second. So you are launching through some acronyms there. So UTMA is UTMA and UGMA is UGMA, Uniform Transfer what is it, to Minors Act?
Minors Act, yep.
Something like that.
Yep. So
it's
the reason I wasn't going to go
to saying like this is a custodial account for younger people to use.
Exactly. And so essentially when you
And
do a custodial account, it's your account, but your parents have ownership of it until you become the age of majority in your state, which is either 18 or 21. This account is a little bit more tax advantage. So you save money on taxes by using this account. But it's got some restrictions and things like that. So again, if we're talking about what's the easiest way for you to get started, I do think using something like a Fidelity Youth account is your lowest hanging fruit. But there are other options available to you out there as well if you're trying to save for college. I think a 529, if you're starting in high school, it's a little late to start a 529. That's why I would probably focus on something like either an UTMA UGMA where you're opening that with your parent. You get a little bit of tax benefits from it. Or if you want really easy, can open in 10 minutes online, you could also focus on something like a Fidelity Youth account.
yeah, and those are great places where like you don't even have to have a parent do this. I know I get this sometimes from students, like, what if my parents aren't willing to do this or they don't want to sit down with me? You are actually able to do this with any adult, can be a custodian on an account for you like this. And you want it to be an adult that you trust, because as Chloe said, like they are technically a co-owner on this account until you reach the age at which you're technically allowed to enter into a contract in that state. So you're allowed to open your own account. The account should transfer ownership to you and solely you once you hit that age. So make sure that whether it's an older sibling, a grandparent, aunt, uncle, parents, close family friend, whatever it is, that it's somebody that you would trust to basically not raise your account or anything like that. So you want someone who is financially responsible, who's going to sit with you, help you set this thing up. You're going to need their, I think, social security number, date of birth, probably an address as well. So they have to verify with the IRS that you are who you say you are. And then that gets reported to the IRS as well. And after that, I think that's it. It's like, it is a 10-minute process. It's really quick to open up these accounts, particularly with Fidelity. It's such a easy website to navigate. And if you Google search the Fidelity Youth account or custodial account, you will find those pages very quickly.
Yeah, and lots of tutorials on how to open them. And I like what you said about gathering the information beforehand, because that's just going to make opening that account a lot easier for you.
So before we go into what comes next, like let's say there are so many options out there, particularly when we see what's on TV. Like, what about these other places like E-Trade, Robinhood, Webull, Acorns? Like, how do we sort through what's a good company versus not a good company, or are they all the same thing?
Yeah, so the reason that I recommend Fidelity above and beyond is because they're one of the few companies where you can get started for as little as $1 for everything. So there are other companies out there like Charles Schwab, TD Ameritrade, Vanguard, et cetera, where you can still do the same things that you can do on Fidelity. But a lot of times you're going to face minimums, especially when it comes to things like their mutual funds, which mutual funds are just which we'll talk a little bit more about mutual funds here in a minute. They're my favorite type of investment. But with mutual funds, a lot of brokerages out there will require minimums of a few $1,000s for you to start investing in those mutual funds, which can be a huge barrier, especially for teenagers when it comes to investing. And so that's why I generally recommend Fidelity, is that even with their mutual funds, their ETFs, their stocks, everything, you can get started with investing for as little as $1, which is really unique. And then also they have automated ETF trading now, or automated ETF investing now too, which a lot of brokerages out there do not have. Again, ETF is just a really fancy term for a different type of investment where you're buying hundreds, if not thousands, of different investments with one purchase instead of just buying one investment at a time. And we'll talk a little bit more about that here in a moment. So that's why Fidelity, again, is one of top of mind. Not only that, they don't have fees for their products. And if they do have fees, they're extremely low fee. So when you're looking at different brokerages out there, if you're like, Chloe, I know you like Fidelity, but I don't want to use Fidelity. I want to use Robinhood, or I want to use E-Trade. What you really want to be looking for is, am I getting paid or charged any fees? Is there fees for trading? Are there fees for buying and selling? Are there fees for just having the account? And that's something that you can find out with a relatively quick Google search. Then also you want to be making sure that it's an account that will grow with you, so that they have things like retirement accounts. They have different account types that are available to you. Most of them do. I know Robinhood just started introducing retirement accounts as well. But you also want to make sure that the app is relatively easy for you to use, especially while you're learning. Again, that's one of the reasons that I recommend Fidelity as well. We don't want to be getting into complicated platforms like E-Trade can be, I think, a little bit more complicated because it's designed to be a trading platform, and that's not something that I recommend folks do, especially young people. So, ease of use is definitely something to be looking for as well. Personally, I don't love Robinhood just because of all of the different security issues that they've had over the years. So I would stick to a more established one if you can, like Fidelity or Vanguard or Charles Schwab. But just keep in mind, Charles Schwab, Vanguard, they're going to have those minimums for their mutual funds as well. So
I was going to say, I've experienced using Robinhood myself. And what turned me off of Robinhood was they had the whole thing when was it AMC stock was doing its thing, and they prevented people from being able to trade it. So they kind of didn't act in their client, their customer's best interest.
Right.
And the other thing then is that a lot of these apps are encouraging you to make trades, to sell your stocks, buy different things. Like you're getting alerts on a regular basis, like, oh, this stock has dropped 10%, buy it now. Or your one's gone up 5%, like maybe it's time to sell, because they make money every time you buy and sell.
Right.
It's a free app to use, but it means it's free for you, but there's money coming from somewhere, and that comes from when you are trading. So they encourage you to trade more. And trading versus buy and hold investing are two different strategies when it comes to investing. So can you tell us a little bit more about those? Like, what is that difference? Because you said you don't really encourage trading very much for teens.
For sure. And I don't encourage trading for anyone. I'm not a believer in day trading. I'm sure you know as well as I do that it doesn't work. It's more like gambling than it is true investing. So when you're starting out with investing, I think a lot of us believe or think that investing is when you're watching a stock and you're seeing how it goes up and down. You're paying attention to how a company is doing. And in your mind, you're like, all right, what I need to do is I got to buy when this stock is low and I got to sell when this stock goes high. It sounds really simple, but unfortunately, it's incredibly difficult to do. Extremely, even the Wall Street bros, even the finance bros, it's really difficult for people to do that consistently. And most of the time when people are doing this, they actually lose money. There's been tons of studies on it. And so what we recommend instead is to be really lazy with your investing, which is great because that means it's really easy and it's something that you're also going to stick to. But not only that, being lazy with your investing when you're doing things like what I'm about to share, it works out better for you in the long term in terms of how much money you make. You're going to make a lot more money if you approach investing through the lazy route instead of approaching it through the day trading gambling route, for sure. So in terms of how do you become a lazy investor, we're looking at one, staying invested for a long time, not trying to day trade and get in and get out, which is, again, good because it's easy to stick to and it's easy to do. But two, we're also looking at buying really, really diversified investments where we're talking about buying hundreds, if not thousands of stocks, instead of buying one or two or three or even 10 stocks by buying individual stocks. We can do this through a few different ways. My favorite way is to do it through index funds. Index fund is just a fancy term for a group of investments that mirrors something. So maybe your students have heard of something like the S&P 500. That is, the S&P 500 is an index, which is just a fancy term for a grouping of different investments. That S&P 500 index contains 500 of the largest companies in the US inside of it. So when you buy something like an S&P 500 index fund, well, can you guess what it's going to have inside of it? It's going to have 500 of the largest stocks in the US inside of it. Now, there are a lot of different index funds out there, but doing something like an S&P 500 index fund, that is like the gold standard when it comes to investing. You will constantly hear people comparing things to the S&P 500 because it's really difficult to do better than the S&P 500. So that's a really great place to start. The other really great place to start is to buy something like a total US stock market index fund. That's a lot of jargon, but all that means is if you search Fidelity Total Stock Market Index Fund, you're going to find an index fund that contains every single stock or a representative sampling of the US stock market inside of it. So you're not just getting 500 stocks, you're getting, I think it's like almost 5,000 stocks just by buying that one index fund. So just by doing either one of those index funds, you're going to do likely better than most investors out there who are trying to time the market. And it's really, really simple and easy for you to do and set up. So that's one option. I want to pause. Any questions on that before I move into the other two options?
No, I think that's well explained. And you're also covering the types of investments that we can choose from, which is really nice. So carry on.
Cool. Okay. The other thing that you can consider doing, especially when you're young and you're still learning, is you could use a robo-advisor. So Fidelity has something called Fidelity Go, where let's say you sign up for their youth account, and as you're signing up for the youth account, it will ask you, do you want us to manage this for you, or do you want to manage it yourself? You can choose to have Fidelity manage it for you by using their robo-advisor Fidelity Go. Somewhere in the question, I'm not sure exactly at what point, they'll ask you that question. And if that's something that interests you, Fidelity Go will do it for you automatically. They'll be investing in index funds for you automatically, and you don't have to do anything except for continue your education to make sure that you are learning how to invest and that you are picking investments that are right for you. But that's something that could get you started with zero knowledge, with just being like, okay, Chloe said I need to start investing. I don't really know how to do it. I'm a little bit scared. So this is one way for me to get started, even when I don't know anything about investing. I believe the fee that the Fidelity Go advisor charges is like 0.25%. So it is a fraction of like using a traditional financial advisor. So that's the downside of it. But for me, it's such a big deal to get you started now that if you're like, the thing that's holding you back is, I don't know what types of investments to pick. I'm a little bit nervous about picking my own index funds. Boom, you can get over that hump by just having somebody do it for you through a robo-advisor. So, and that's something that the robo-advisor will ask you a few questions, like how long are you planning to invest for? Are you nervous about investing? What's your goal with investing? That's something that you can fill out with your parent or that trusted adult that you're going to be creating this account with. But again, this is a way to get you started with investing when you know literally nothing about investing.
And you don't have to stay with it forever. So if this is like the thing that gets you started and you're like, yes, I just want to learn with this robo-advisor or this help, you can always switch back to just doing self-managed whenever you feel like it. And that's a nice thing to know.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I did. So when I first got my 401k, I didn't know anything about investing in the stock market. And for those of you who are like, what's 401k? A 401k is just a retirement account that your employer gives you when you are working in the corporate America space. It's something that even potentially, depending on how much you're working now, you might have through your work. So a lot of people will just choose like, it manages for me. That's what I did as well for the first probably 5 or 6 years because I didn't know anything about investing, but at least I didn't let that stop me from getting invested. And then by the time I left, I had, $10,000 sitting in that account, even though I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know anything. It was still building money for me. And that's really the important part is let's just get you started. You can figure out the rest as you go.
Yeah. And that just, side note, if you do end up working for an employer and they say, hey, do you want to get invested in our 401k or 403b or our retirement plan? You say yes.
Yes. Yes, you do.
And just let that start and let it help you out.
Yeah,
if you know more about it, you're like, no, like I'm going to manage my own money, like fine. But if you don't, let them help you.
For sure. And like the power, just a quick story on the power of using your 401k. My brother, Max, obviously he knows like I educate people about this stuff. And so when he got asked if he wanted to participate in his 401k, he said yes. And then he selected the button that was like increase your contributions every year. Eventually he was like, hey, Chloe, can you look at my 401k? And I was like, sure. He logged in for the very first time and realized he had $50,000 sitting in the 401k over just a couple of years. And then that was 2 years ago. Then he has not looked at it since. He just logged in 2 weeks ago and he now has $130,000 sitting in there. So these are really powerful tools. And again, a real testament to just get started. It's okay if you don't know anything about investing. If you're using a robo-advisor or you're using something like a target date fund, which I can talk about too if you'd like, you're going to be okay. And then you can make changes as you learn more. Okay. So did you want me to talk about target date funds?
Let's hit that target date fund. Yeah, let's do it.
So the third option in terms of what you can invest in when you're like, oh, I don't know anything about investing is target date funds. So target date funds were around before robo-advisors were around, but they're kind of a similar idea. You can buy a target date fund with the date that you plan to access the money on it. So for example, a target date fund, when you go to Fidelity or you go to Vanguard and you're logging into your account and you're looking for what do I invest in, if you search target date fund, you'll find a list of investments that have years on them. You'll see like Vanguard Target Date Fund 2060 or Vanguard Target Date Fund 2040. If you're not planning on accessing this money for 20, 30, 40 years, pick the date that is closest to that date that you plan to retire or access this money. So if you're like, Chloe, I'm not planning on accessing this money for 60 years or 50 years because you're 15 right now, then you're going to pick what is it? I don't think the 2075 funds are out yet, but you could pick the farthest date out, like the 2060 fund. So you pick that 2060 fund. That 2060 fund is going to automatically invest in a very diversified portfolio for you, and it's going to change over time. So the closer and closer you get to 2060, the more conservative you want your investments to be. So you're going to start in 2025 if you buy a 2060 fund. It's going to be probably 90% stocks in it. It's going to be all about building wealth. It's going to be a wealth accumulation portfolio. But as we get closer and closer to 2060, that fund, that target date fund knows that, okay, I got to start getting a little bit more conservative so Chloe doesn't lose all her money by the time she wants to pull this money out in 2060. It's going to do that for you automatically and you don't have to do anything. So that's another very hands-off investing tool. They're not perfect, but there's something that will get you started when you know literally nothing about investing, and it's going to be super diversified. So those are really great tools to get you started with investing. Again, when you don't know anything about investing, if you're using whatever brokerage you're using, you can literally Google Fidelity target date funds, Vanguard target date funds, Charles Schwab target date funds, and you will be able to find target date funds at your brokerage.
That's a really useful tool. My wife has one of those. It's great. It changes as she gets older without having to do anything. And when you say conservative, we're talking about the level of risk that you are taking. So aggressive means lots of stocks. Your money's going to go up. It's going to go down over the time. It should trend towards the positive, which is the idea. And then conservative meaning like we don't want those big swings in our money right now. We prefer something a little bit more stable so that we have a good idea of what we're going to have when we retire. Because you don't want to hit retirement age, be like, okay, I'm ready to use my money now, and the stock market to fall. And now suddenly, instead of having $1 million, you have 750,000. Like you don't want to lose a quarter of your portfolio in a short space of time when you're close to retiring. In the beginning, who cares? Like it's going to do its thing. We've had some major wobbles in 2025 already. And most people, if they're near retirement age, might be panicking if they're not in a conservative portfolio. But if you're building wealth, you're just like, okay, this is just another day in the stock market and off we go and continue on as normal.
Yeah. And when you're 15, 16, 17 years old, that's the opportunity, as long as you're not planning on accessing this money for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. Because some of you may be like, I want to access this money in 10 years. If you want to access this money in 10 years, you're going to have to be a lot more conservative, even if you're young. So that is something to keep in mind, is that we're really basing this off of when do I want to access this money? If I want to access this money in 10 years, I need to be a lot more conservative than if I'm 15 years old and not planning on accessing this money until my 50s. Then you got to be as aggressive as you possibly can be. Even Rob and I, assuming Rob's also not retiring until his 50s, we are still aggressive investors because we have decades before we plan on retiring.
Yeah. So if you're thinking like, I'm going to use this to buy a house in 10 years, like that's not money you want to go super aggressive with, or I'm paying for college in 4 years, you're probably not investing that money anyway. You're probably better off saving that money at this point.
For sure.
Okay. So before we dive into the rest of the conversation, we're going to do our trivia section for today. So hopefully you guys are familiar with this by now, but I'm going to put a question up, and on the back of your activity sheet that goes with this, you have a spot where you can do your trivia answer, and hopefully you can have a little bit of fun in your classroom. See who can get closest to the answer without going over. And I'm going to ask Chloe her answer as well and see how she does. Okay, so how much does the average US household spend if they travel? So not counting the people who didn't travel, but if they traveled, how much did the average US household spend on travel in summer of 2024? Put your best guess, so number answer without going over, and then we'll check at the end and see how you guys did. Okay, so Chloe, when we talk about using the robo-advisor or any of these other ones, will they kind of take care of it for me? Like, can I just put my money in the account and then they'll just take care of everything else? Or is there a way to even make it more automated than that? Because I know one of the things that stops people, and me in the beginning as well, was I didn't want the hassle of having to like transfer money from my bank account to my investments every single month. And then usually if I have to do it manually, I will find some reason not to do it. There's some big expense coming up that's going to demand my money, or I know this is coming down the line. I probably shouldn't invest right now, but if it's coming out of my paycheck or it's automated, I know I'll do it and I'll find a way to make the rest of the money work. Is there something like that that exists?
Yeah. So if you are using the robo advisor, which again is that easy done for you opportunity, you can set it up so that as you're filling out the questionnaire at the beginning, when you're selecting your robo advisor, it's going to ask you, how often do you want to contribute to this account? So you can say, I want to do it monthly, I want to do it weekly, I want to do it, however often you want to do it. So again, that's a really easy win for you. Also, if you decide to pick your own investments, whether that's a target date fund or whether that's using index funds, when you go to buy your investments, you can set it up as a recurring investment, which I do highly recommend for the exact same reasons that Rob mentioned. On Fidelity, it's very easy. When you go in to trade, it will ask you if you want to make this a recurring investment or not. Then there's also, if you don't do it that way, there's also ways to set up a recurring transfer or a recurring investment as well. But we do recommend that because, again, you're going to get into the habit of investing all of the time, rather than exactly what you said of like, oh, I'll only invest when I have the money, or I'll invest like when I think about it. We kind of want to treat this like a bill. We don't want to think about this as an optional expense. We want to think about this as like, if I'm saving for my future, this is a requirement. I need to do this if I ever want to stop working someday, which, I know you guys aren't working right now, but I promise once you start working, you're going to want to stop working someday. And the best way to make sure you're staying invested and you're buying when the market's low, buying when the market's high, buying when the market's anywhere in between is to just make a monthly or even bi-weekly goal to put that money aside. So keep in mind, you can do that with $10 a month. You could do that with $20 a month. It doesn't have to be something crazy, especially when you're this young, but whatever amount that you're like, you know what? I know for sure I can afford to put $20 away into the stock market once a month, then do it, And then if you get excited and you're like, wow, I'm actually really enjoying this, maybe I'll do $50 every month. But whatever it is, treat it like a bill. And the best way to treat it like a bill is to create a recurring investment.
Yeah. And I like that, like, oh, I can always increase it a month if I want to. But I encourage students, like, even if it's just $1 a month, you can all find $1 a month that you could put into your investments. And especially if it's a brokerage account, like if we're talking about a retirement account, like an IRA or something like that, like you're supposed to be earning that money and then taking it from your earnings and putting it in. But if it's a brokerage account, anybody can use it. You can put your savings in, you can put the money you found in the ground in, like it doesn't matter. So start there and be like, okay, $1 a month. I'm going to set it up. I'm going to link it to my bank account. I'm going to set up $1 a month to transfer over. I'll make sure I always have $1 in there. And that is a great starting point. It's so much easier to turn that dollar into $10, into 50, into 100 than it is to be like, I'm going to wait for the day where I can put $1,000 a month into my investing, because that day it will be so far away and it may not come because you'll always find this reason to not do it. Start really small, get comfortable with it, and then increase it. And that's going to be one of the biggest tips we'll give you for like just getting started and keeping it going and making it automatic, which is so powerful.
100%. And it's one of those things too, that never underestimate the power of a habit. Just getting in the habit of, okay, this is something I just do automatically. If you're able to start that now as a teenager, you're going to be light years ahead of people when you get to your 20s and your 30s and 40s. This is something a lot of people don't learn until they're 30 or 40 or even in their 50s. And so just you creating the habit now, that means it's going to be top of mind when you make more money, when you get a job, and you're going to already have that habit of like, this is something I have to do. It's non-negotiable. non-negotiable. And so like Rob said, it's going to be a lot easier for you to increase that over time.
All right. So Chloe, you ready to take some student questions? We got a few of them here. Okay. So the first one comes from Mr. Meyer's class. So I think he's putting it on behalf of his students. How do I transfer the account to me, I guess after I turn 18? So like I've turned 18, I've got the custodial account. How do I make that transfer to me?
So it depends on the brokerage that you use, but most of the time it should happen automatically when you turn the age of majority. If you're in a state where 18 is the age of majority, which means that it should get transferred over to you now. I think most of the states is 18. If you're like, I want to just double check that this is mine now and my parents are off it, you can just call your brokerage and say, hey, I'm 18 now. I want to make sure this account is transferred over to me. What information do you need? Again, it should happen automatically, but it doesn't hurt for you to check. Put it on your to-do list the day after your birthday.
I like it. Yeah. Just like, did it happen? Great. If not, call your bank. Sometimes I think it can take a month for that to go through. Like the order gets put in, then it takes a bit to get executed, but yeah, you should see it pretty quickly afterwards. Mm-hmm. Now, this question I really like. So we talk a lot about the pros of investing, but Delilah wants to know, like, give me the pros cons list. Like, what are the cons of investing? Are there any?
Yeah, great question. So the pros of investing is that it's a very easy way for you to make money over time. Okay. So if you've got time, which you guys do as teenagers, you can have the potential to build so much wealth over the next several decades, and your money is much more powerful the younger that you are. The cons of investing is it is not something that's going to make you wealthy overnight. It's not something where you're like, I put $1 in and it turned into $100 in a month. That's not how it works. Anybody who's telling you that's how it works should be raising some red flags, because there's no such thing as a get rich quick scheme. There's no such thing as getting rich overnight. So the cons is that it takes time for your money to grow. It's something that you've got to be patient with, and it's not something that you want to be using if you need that money like now or in a couple of years, or even as little as 5 years. So really, you only want to be investing money that you do not need for 5+ years from now.
This kind of follows up with the next question. Dylan wants to know, like, okay, like I'm in high school, like I want to go to college. I'm saving for college right now. Should I still be investing?
Probably not for college. So if you're wanting to start investing now for the future, like retirement, which I highly recommend, getting started now is going to make it so much easier for you. Or let's say you even want to start investing now to buy a house in 20 years or buy a house in 15 years. You absolutely can still be investing. But if it's money that you're trying to save for college and you're 16, 17, 18, you've only got a couple of years before college. And so we really don't want to be investing that money in the stock market, because the stock market, some years it's up 30%, it's up 40%, it's up 10%. But then some years, like this year, it's down. You're losing money. It's down 10%, it's down 20%, it's down 30%. We don't want to put your money that you need in the next couple of years into something that could potentially lose money in the short term. Like I said, investing builds wealth over time. So the longer you stay invested, the more likely you are to make money and make a lot of money. But when we're looking at less than 5 years, it's too risky for you to be investing that money for if you need it in 5 years. What you can do is you can use something like a high yield savings account to start at least making the money you are saving for college make as much interest as possible. So most high yield savings accounts you can open online. It takes 10 minutes or less. They have youth high yield savings accounts as well, but you'll probably still need like your parents' social security or something along those lines. Or you could look at potentially buying something like a CD, a certificate of deposit from your bank. The only reason I would suggest looking into something like that is because you're locking in your interest rate. So with a high yield savings account, it's just like a regular savings account, but you're getting higher interest than you would at your brick and mortar bank down the street. But those interest rates are going to change as the federal interest rates change. And so if you did something like a certificate of deposit where you get maybe a 6-month or year-long CD, you lock in that interest rate at 4% or 3.5%, whatever the offer is, for that time period. So even if the interest rates drop in 6 months after you bought that CD, your CD will still be paying you the interest rate that you signed up for. So those are the two things I would look into if you're saving for college in a few years, is a CD or a high yield savings account.
And I would still say, Dylan, like we still want you to open that investing account. Like maybe what you're saying is like, I work a part-time job and I'm making an extra $100 a month that I'm putting towards college. Maybe let's say 99 towards college, $1 towards investing. And then as college is paid for, then we can shift that balance more towards investing instead of saving. So we do want to take care of future us as well as current demands, but shift the proportions based on what's the most urgent thing right now. So definitely get your account open.
For sure. And think about it too. Let's say you're like, all right, well, I'm going to save what I can for college now, but I'm going to start investing. Maybe in 15 years, as that account grows and you have student loans, you could take that money out to pay off your student loans or something along those lines. So I wouldn't cut off investing, but yes, exactly like Rob said, maybe the priority is different where you're like 75% is going to go towards saving for college, 25% is going to go towards investing.
I think this next one's a good opportunity to just recap the whole thing. Taylor wants to know, how do I get started? Can you just take us through the steps really quick again? Like, here's how you go from start to finish.
Absolutely. So if you're under the age of 18, you are going to need a trusted adult to help you open an account. You can either open, like what we talked about, the Fidelity Youth account, which is pretty easy to do. And it's a taxable brokerage, which means if you're making money and buying and selling, getting capital gains, getting paid dividends, a whole lot of jargon, just basically to say, if you're making money, you will have to pay taxes on it. Or you can open a custodial account with your parent called an UGMA, and you'll have a little bit more tax advantages within that account. So that's the first thing, open an account type. Then you're going to connect your bank account to it. Once you connect your bank account to it, you're going to pick investments, okay? You can either pick your own investments like the index funds that we talked about earlier, starting with something like an S&P 500 index fund or a total stock market index fund. Or you can do something like a robo-advisor, where the robo-advisor will pick investments for you for a small fee. Or you can also pick something like a target date fund inside of that account. Then once you've done that, you can also set up a recurring investment so that every single month you're putting money into this account and buying those investments. If you're using a robo-advisor, that's something that you can do when you're setting that up. Or when you go to buy your first investment, whether it's an index fund or a target date fund, you can set that up as you buy your first investment and just make it a recurring transfer. And then just keep to it.
That's it. It's not that hard, guys. It's not that hard. Yep.
That
Pick
whole thing
firm,
should take 15
link it to your bank
minutes.
account. Yep.
Yeah, 15 minutes. 15 minutes. And then in 20 years, 30 years, you're going to be like, holy cow, there's so much money in this account.
Yeah. All right. And we're going to come back and wrap up in a second with Chloe's number one tip for you guys. But I want to see the answer to our trivia question really quick and see how you all did. You got your answer, Chloe?
Yeah, I don't think it's good.
What was your guess? What
was
your guess?
I'm going to guess $7,000.
Okay, let's see. All right, you lose, Chloe.
Yeah, I was double. I was like, I feel like this is probably high, but dang it. My second guess was $4,000, so that would have been better. But I was like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's and travel, if that's your goal, guys, and you are like, I really want to travel, I want to see places, whether it's internationally or within the country or within the state, it's something you budget for and you make part of your financial plan. If that's something you see in your future, like you're like, when I retire, I want to be a travel bug, I don't want to stay in one spot, I want to go everywhere, then you make sure you are investing enough to be able to afford that lifestyle. And that just is how you figure out those numbers. We have great interviews where we do crunch those numbers. So like with Jeremy Schneider, Yaneli Espinal, those are great videos you can watch in terms of like, well, how much do I need to retire? How much do I need to save each month to make that happen? So make sure you check those out. And I'm sure you're also covering that in your personal finance class too. All right, Chloe, what is your number one piece of advice for teens when it comes to building wealth?
Honestly, get started now. Like, I wish somebody had drilled that into me as a high school student. I'd be so much wealthier than I am now, and just would have avoided a lot of the pain that I faced in my 20s and even in my early 30s. Whatever it is, just get started. Like, even if it's $10 a month, if it's $1 a month, like you said, you're going to be so grateful that you got started now. Every single investor, every single one wishes they had gotten started when they were out of the womb. So you are the next best thing. Starting as a teenager is something that so many people do not have the opportunity to do. And so if it just takes a little bit more education, a little bit more learning to get you to a place where you feel really confident in doing this, do it, because you are not going to regret it. You're going to be so grateful you did it. And it's going to set you up to have so much flexibility, security, and options when you're my age and even younger. So that's my biggest thing, is like, anything you can to get started now. Oh my gosh, you're going to be so grateful that you did.
Yeah. And I know it's hard. Like we both talked about this at the beginning. Like, when I was a teenager, would I have listened? And the chances are probably no, but like, man, I wish there was that person who would have been like, just do it.
Yep.
Even if you don't see the point in it right now, you're like, no, I'll never need that. I know better than you. Like, just somebody who would have been like, just do it. And man, I would be thanking them so many times over right now.
Like,
So,
even if you don't get it now, you're going to get it in 20 years. You're going to get it. And you're going to be like, man, I'm so glad that dude told me to just put $10 a month and increase it every year. Like, it's going to change your life.
So speaking of, we have a challenge for you. We want you to take that first step, and we want you to tell us when you do it. So either myself or Chloe, like, if you get that first dollar invested in your brokerage account or retirement account or whatever investing account it is, I want you to send us a message and let us know. So you can either send me a message via email or a DM on Instagram. You can see my Instagram handle at the bottom of the screen down here, and we will shout you out, like, on our page. We'll be like, this is amazing. So-and-so has just started investing and they're like a teenager. They're going to be so wealthy when they get older. Chloe, how should they contact you if they want to get a shout out?
Yeah, do the same. You can find me at Clo Bare Money Coach. So you can see it right there on the screen. Just tag me and I will congratulate you personally and share on my page as well.
Yeah, because we know how huge this will be if you get started now. And I know we're still trying to sell it to you, and it is going to be so big. And I hope you are going to take action on that and let us know when you do, because that is going to be such a big thing to celebrate with you. All right, Chloe, thank you so much for your time today. Is there anything else you want to share, or anywhere that we can find you if they want to learn more from you? We know we got your Instagram. Is there anywhere else that you exist online that we need to know about?
That's the biggest place that I exist, on Instagram. I'm trying to get back into YouTube, but it is a slow journey. And then I make content on TikTok as well, but the most content is definitely going to be on Instagram. So say hi there and let me know if you learned something. And if you have any questions, feel free to DM me as well.
All right. Thank you very much for your time today, Chloe. And thank you all for being here today. We'll see you soon.
Thank you, guys.